Morse, husband to Irene, Grandpa, and Dad, and Great Grandpa. That's a pretty remarkable thing. But as I was saying, we moved to Mequon, I would guess when I was about 4 to 5 years old, 5 I believe, which was back in 1934. And so then the story starts from there, and many of the escapades that we did, and the adventures we had, and the make-believe things that we did, and just a general overall kid things. And many of the old-time characters that we call them characters now, but they were old men and ladies also. But primarily, it was the ones that I knew, the things that we'd done, and different adventures that we would have. And so as this starts out, as a child growing up, all of us children of Bertha and Clyde Morse was raised in Mequon, Illinois, which was considered to be on the banks of the Old Spoon River, just south of the town. Many ventures were planned and carried out. The area where was rich in Indian folklore. It was so easy to have great Indian raids and battles and cowboys and the Indians and running up and down and whooping and hollering. And we used to play on what is now known as what we called was the old Indian Mound. At the north side of the mound there was an old shack. There was 2 brothers that lived there, and their names were Puss Lewis and his brother Bant Lewis. Now Puss was worked out for different jobs and worked out for people and various other places. Bant was quite a horseman, and he worked many of the old horse tracks and groomed and helped train horses. And that's where he seen us ride and different things in our little town. Now all this property down there on the old Indian Mound and the bottoms and things, it's up to the Old Spoon River. This belonged to Nate Donaldson. And old Nate was quite an old character. And he had some horses down there in the bottoms, down there around the Indian Mound. And he had a kind of a cream, maybe a sorrel type little mare, and it had a colt. And that colt was just cold black. And he was a Mustang if you ever seen one. He had the mane and his tail would just flow. I put you in mind of the black stallion. And so the horse, the mare, the mother to that colt, well, she was a retired old racehorse. And she was quite up in age, and I would guess her to be, it's hard for me to tell now, just remember, but because when I was a kid, she had all kinds of get up and go, so she was still in pretty good shape. And he used to holler at us kids and say, "Stay away from them horses and leave them alone," and so one time when we were down in the bottom, we thought we were great horse wranglers and everything else. We got them into their shelter. And there was another building down there, not too far from Banton and the Lewis brothers. And we got them in there by coaxing them in with some corn. And we got a halter made out of rope on the mare. And she gentled right down because she's accustomed to being led or something, because she was a former racehorse. And so Van Lewis seen us ride down there and trying to do things, but so, I jumped on her back and she kind of jumped around a little, and And so he's seen all of this. And so he said, well, boys, if you're going to ride her, he says, I'll go up and I'll ask Nate if you can ride her down here. And so he went up, and, well, in the meantime, I went over to Nate, and I asked him if I could lead her around down there, you know. Well, you know, that wasn't all I had in mind, but I did, and he said, you know, and I didn't know. I thought I was ahead of Bant, but apparently Bant beat me there. But anyway, he said, as long as Bant Lewis is down there, he said, it'll be all right. Well, you know, I was the only one after that could ride her, and because he said I'm the only one that ever had guts enough to come up and talk to me about it. And so then we used to race her all the time. Well, now, I'm getting ahead of my story. I would ride her around down there in the bottom, and so then one day I ventured up, and I took her up there by Nate's, and he called her Southern, oh, I don't want to say Southern Belle, but Southern Dreamer, or something to that nature anyway, like a Southern Belle, and that she was a racehorse. And so, you know, people would challenge me around town with their horses, because that was the days when the kids all of us didn't have cars or nothing like that. You had to get around on horseback mainly. And a lot of times that's the only way of transportation these kids did have around there. And so when they'd come to town on weekends normally, and we'd have a big horse race, and because, you know, everybody thought they had a fast horse. And then it got to going that, goodness sakes, they were coming from all over. You know, all over the country and coming in, and well, now not all over the state of Illinois, but just in the area, and would come in and try to challenge me, and I was the one to beat. So old Nate, you know, he heard about it, and so they took her up to Hacksaltine, which he was a city blacksmith. And they trimmed her feet up and put shoes on her. And so then here come a big old boy with a big old red horse, and he was supposed to be the fast quarter miler. And so Bant, being the trainer that he was, he said, here, put this saddle on her. Well, you know, I never rode a jockey's saddle before. But anyway, he told me how to set in there and take a lock of her hair in your hands and just ride her right there. And so I did that, and we would just, when she'd cross them sidewalks, all you could hear was a click, 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 click. And it just was just the air just whistling past your ears, and she was just laying like her stomach was almost she would stretch to her stomach was just about on the ground. But see, she could run. And we left them all, and then we'd come back again, and then we let them blow a little, and then this kid, he said, well, I can still beat her. And I said, well, I'll give you a half a block. And I still beat him. And it got to be known that that horse was to be beat. But nobody challenged me after that. But anyway, to shorten this story up, old Bant Lewis, he said, Ted, I'll make a jockey out of you. And he said, we'll go and start on the circuit. Well, I said, we got to see Mom first. And Mom says, that's okay. You can go. But you be home in time, and you will go to school. So there was my short-lived career as being a jockey. And I thank God for what my mother said, because I never regretted it. Never, ever, ever. Thank God.